book of Judges tonight. The book of Judges. It really struck me a few weeks ago as we were having Sunday school in here, and this passage of Scripture came up, and it seemed like I just couldn't get it off my mind, and the Lord directed me here tonight as well. Book of Judges, chapter number 2. Now, you really, as always, seems like most of my messages, you have to hold on for the whole thing to understand the concept and the context of what we're trying to get across tonight. So if you will, I want you to use your imagination a little bit as well and follow along, and I think we can land this here in just a little while and it'll all make sense. But you know, there's a lot of sad passages in the Scripture, and this is one of them here. If you really think about it and put it in context, it's a pretty sad scene. So tonight, like some movies or television shows that you might watch, every now and then the creator of the movie or show, the opening scene will be at present time or at what it's the event that it's trying to get to, and then all of a sudden when that curtain closes, because it's like you opened up right in the middle of what's going on in the part of the movie, and then all of a sudden they'll close the curtains and they'll back up to 20 years before, 100 years before, and then you get to watch the story leading up to that portion of the movie, and then that scene plays out again, and it helps you to understand and put in context what happened. So we're going to do something similar to that tonight. We're starting where we're going to end up. So here in a minute, we're going to go to a couple other books and look at some things. So here tonight, if you will, we're going to open up the opening scene, and we're going to see something very sad. And here in Judges chapter number 2, in verse number 10, it says, "And also all that generation were gathered unto their fathers, and there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and served Balaam. And they forsook the Lord God of their fathers, which brought them up out of the land of Egypt, and followed other little g gods of the people that were round about them, and bowed themselves unto them, and provoked the Lord to anger. And they forsook the Lord, and served Baal and Ashtaroth." So tonight we open up this scene, if you will, in a very sad state for these people. If you really grab a hold, maybe like I did a few weeks ago in Sunday school, and think about the devastation here, there rose up a generation. Now we're not talking about, it's kind of like here, I think about our church at Chilhowie Baptist Church. We're not talking about some people group that was ignorant to the truth, just kind of like our church here. We're not talking about a little one-room, 8-foot by 8-foot square building. We're talking about Chilhowie Baptist Church that's a lighthouse in this community. We're talking about the nation of Israel that has people like Moses and Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all these great people. And one day a generation arose that knew not the Lord, nor the works that he had done, nor about what happened down in Egypt. They didn't even want to serve the Lord. They followed after the little g gods of the people that they had surrounded themselves with. They served Balaam. They served Ashtaroth. They served all the, and didn't even know anything about, this is Moses' people. This is Joshua's crowd. Those are patriarchs. This church is a lighthouse in this community, and it burdens me when I read this to think that in one generation it could all be destroyed and gone over a generation that rises up that knew not the Lord, that didn't know about what God had done for them when they were slaves in Egypt. And it burdens us to think about that. And as we open this scene tonight and we see this sad story, I can't help to think, how in the world did they get to that point? So tonight we close the curtains here, and we're going to back up. And we're going to start at another portion and move forward to the closing scene. And I think here, I often wonder sometimes, I don't know why this thought come to mind, but I've often wondered sometimes when you're driving through the country, the beautiful country that we live in, and you see this beautiful two-story, enormous farmhouse that's leaning to one side because the foundation has crumbled. It's all grown up around it. The stone walls broken down where there used to be a gate to enter into the yard. It's not kept up anymore. And quite frankly, most of those places is nicer than the house I live in. As far as, I'm talking two-story porch all the way around, dormers, 2 or 3 chimneys to heat it. I mean, I'm talking, thinking, how in the world, with today's money, what would it cost to build something like that? And now it's just in ruins. And I think about that, and I can't help but think, well, what happened? Did somebody just quit doing the maintenance one day? Did folks just kind of quit taking care of it? Here was a good one I thought of. Did the next generation, the children, think they could build something better? We've come full circle now because we go into those houses and realize what a 2x8 is all about. The 2x8 in that house is a 2x8. It's not a 1 1/4 by 6 3/4. There's hardwood floors made out of wormy chestnut and oak that people would pay top dollar for today. So we couldn't build something better. Matter of fact, we've returned now to get a lot of that stuff to put in our own houses. They don't make them like they used to. And there's a proverb that, as I was thinking about why in the world am I going to tell a house story, that sounds awful familiar to me. Proverbs 24:30 says, I went by the field of the slothful and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. And lo, it was all grown over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. Then I saw and considered it well. I looked upon it and received instruction. Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. So as we think tonight about this beautiful, well-kept farmhouse, if you will, you know, you think back to the day, because we're getting ready to go back when things were good. So in your imagination, I can kind of see a well-kept lawn and garden and maybe a white picket fence, a stone wall, a gate going down the sidewalk to the house, kids playing in the yard. But Mom and Dad got old and the kids got grown and they moved on to do something else. And we now return to a place here in Judges that gives us a warning. That warning is, like I read, again, not to just repeat myself, but I want you to really grasp what happened. There arose another generation which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. And lo, it was all grown over with thorns and nettles, and covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. Watch this. Then I saw and considered it well. I looked upon it and received instruction. I think Preacher Chuck said this one time, maybe when he was preaching about that. I think it was him. He said he learned something. When he looked at it, he learned something. It says he received instruction. He learned something. So tonight, what I would like to take us on is a little journey to learn something. We started off an opening scene in a bad situation, so what do we do about it? What do we look back and learn from the past going to this? So let's back up, if you will, to the book of Deuteronomy. You know, the book of Leviticus teaches you how to be holy. Numbers, they went on a pilgrimage, and here it's the book of remembrance, if you will, but it's got some good things for us, so we're going to learn and take some instruction. Deuteronomy 1, we'll dive right in. It says in verse number 5, on this side Jordan, in the land of Moab, began Moses to declare this law, saying, the Lord our God spake unto us at Horeb, saying, ye have dwelt long enough in this mount. That word dwell literally means to abide or to continue. So he was telling the people, he's saying, listen, we're getting ready to cross over the Jordan. You're getting ready to cross over the Jordan, if you will. He said, listen, you're getting ready to cross over in a victorious Christian life, that if you follow the statutes and commandments of the Lord, you're going to have victory after victory after victory. So we're going to get ready. You've dwelt here long enough, so it's time to move forward. And if you think about the preaching of old and the men that stood behind this pulpit and in camp meetings and tent meetings and said, listen, you've dwelt long enough. You got to do something for God. You got to get your life and your heart right, and you got to move forward. You got to go forward. He says, listen, you've dwelt long enough. And then he goes on here and he says, you've continued a long time here. It's time to go into the land. Verse 8, behold, I have set the land before you. Go in and possess the land. It says the land's here. It's here. The victorious Christian life's here. You need to go possess it. Chapter number 2. So now follow along tonight. We're Wednesday night. We're Bible study time. Chapter 2, verse number 3. Ye have compassed this mountain long enough. Turn ye northward. Verse 5, meddle not with them, for I will not give you of their land, no, not so much as a footbreadth. He says, listen, it's time to go forward. Quit worrying about what's going on around you and those people. That's not the life I've promised you in a Christian life, but your focus is on where I'm sending you. Your focus is on heaven. Your focus is on a victorious life. Don't pay attention to this crowd around you and what's going on and the hustle and bustle of the world. You're not even going to get 1 foot of that. That's not yours to possess. Move forward. Go on. So as we go on here, and he's telling them, don't touch and don't meddle. That's what that word means. Don't handle it. Don't mix. Don't mingle. And then in Deuteronomy chapter number 4, verse number 9, he says, only take heed to thyself and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget. So he started off by telling them, he said, listen, it's time to move on. We've dwelt long enough. Now listen, take heed. That word heed means pay attention to this. Keep thy soul diligently. That means steady application. Lest thou forget. Now, he don't just stop there. You got to pay attention to every part of this tonight to understand it. Every jot, every tittle. He goes on and says, the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest they depart from thy heart all the days of thy life, but teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons. He said, listen, you pay attention to what I'm telling you, and it's important because you've got to pass it to the next generation, to not just your sons, but to your sons' sons. So I don't know of a better way to say it like this. I said it in Sunday school a few weeks ago, is, don't just teach people about the Lord, but also teach them to teach other people. Teach them to teach the sons' sons, and so on and so forth, because the problem is it's not that somebody maybe not know about the Lord along the way, but if somebody fails to teach somebody else, then we're in trouble. We're in trouble. So you got to teach them to teach others, lest they forget. Pay attention to what he's saying. Take heed, pay attention to thyself, and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget, lest they forget. So be careful. Teach them. In verse 23, he tells them again, take heed unto yourselves, lest ye forget. Pay attention, lest ye forget. Chapter 5, verse 15 of Deuteronomy says, and remember. What are we remembering? That thou was a servant in the land of Egypt, and that the Lord thy God brought thee out thence through a mighty hand, and by a stretched out arm. Therefore the Lord thy God commanded thee to keep the Sabbath day. He says, listen, remember. Now, this is hard preaching right here now. I mean, he's saying, listen, and that's what he's trying to drive in their head. And he says, listen, it's time to get up. Let's move forward. Now, you better pay attention lest you forget. You better teach the next generation and the next and the sons and the sons' sons. But all along while you're doing this, you better remember. Now, I didn't mean for this to happen, but I'm preaching tonight to a Wednesday night crowd. He says, listen, remember, some of you's been in here saved a long time, years. But don't ever lose the fact and remember and pay attention to what the verse says. It's, listen, you were slaves down in Egypt. You were slaves in the world. But by the mighty hand of God, by a strong arm, he reached down. And what you couldn't do for yourself, he did for you and picked you up out of the miry clay and put your foot on a solid rock. He says, listen, no matter the age, don't ever let it get to a point in your life that you don't remember what the Lord God did for you. You were slaves down in Egypt. Slaves. Don't forget that. Remember it. Hold on to it. Tell others about it. Tell the other folks that you're trying to teach. In chapter 6, in verse number 4 and 5, It says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thine soul, and with all thy might." He says, listen, crowd, it's not me. It ain't about Moses. It's not about Aaron. It's not about grandma and grandpa and mom and dad. Listen, but God. But God, it's the Lord. He's one. There's no more. That's it. And it settles it. And if He's your single focus, then verse 6 says, "And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thine hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes. And thou shalt write them upon the post of thy house and on thy gates." He says, listen, it's very important. Teach the children. Teach them in the morning, in the evening. Teach them at bedtime, when they get up. Teach them about God and the goodness of God and what He's done. Teach them. Put it in front of them. Let them see it. Put it where they always see it. Where they always see it. Verse number 12 says, "Then beware, lest ye forget the Lord which brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage." You know what that says to me tonight is we finished up just a second ago, a few verses back, with teach your children while you're in your house. It says, listen, as you're living your life, you're going about your day and life and work and school and activities, and teach your children. But as you get busy in life, beware lest you forget. Beware when things are going good, lest you forget. Remember down there in Egypt, it was a little rough. Remember you was in bondage down there. And remember now why you have the freedom and the blessings that they've come from God. So as we go on here in verse 12 and 13, it says, "And thou shalt fear the Lord thy God and serve Him, and shalt swear by His name. Ye shall not go after other little g gods of the little g gods of the people." Now listen, again, pay attention. This is going to help you, and it's going to resonate here in a minute. He says, listen, beware lest ye forget. Ye shall not go after those little g gods of the people which are round about you. For the Lord thy God is a jealous God among you, lest the anger of the Lord thy God be kindled against thee, and destroy thee from off the face of the earth. He says, don't mix and mingle with that crowd. Don't be careful. Don't get sucked into that crowd, to the little g gods. Beware. He says, but there's some conditions. There's some conditions to this thing, so you got to understand there's certain steps. You got to always want to move forward. You've got to remember where you came from. You got to be careful, don't forget. Teach these children. Teach the next generation. Realize that the Lord, He's God. There's only one. Beware of these things. Don't start mixing and mingling. And now He's saying, listen, there's some conditions. Now I'm going to read these real quick for us tonight. Deuteronomy chapter number 12. I'm probably not even going to read them all, but I want you to see, get the understanding of what we're saying. He said, listen, there's some conditions here. Deuteronomy 12, verse 2, ye shall utterly destroy all the places. I always like that. I don't fully always understand the meaning of words and things. I write contracts for a living, and I know one thing, that if something says you can do this or you should do it this way, listen, if you don't want to do it that way, it's just fine. But when you have that word shall in there, you better pick up your ears, because that's a commandment. It's not a suggestion. Ye shall utterly destroy all the places wherein the nations which ye shall possess served their little g gods. Verse 3, and ye shall overthrow their altars, and break down their pillars, and burn their groves with fire. Verse 4, ye shall not do so unto the Lord your God, but unto the place which the Lord your God shall choose out of all your tribes to put his name there, even unto his habitation. So he's saying, listen, you don't do like this crowd's doing. Verse 7, and there ye shall eat before the Lord your God, and ye shall rejoice in all that ye put your hand unto, ye and your household, wherein the Lord thy God hath blessed thee. He says, listen, don't be the household that goes around just hum-slum all the time and Downer Debbie. Says, listen, perk your head up and be rejoicing and say, listen, God's blessed us. If God blesses us tonight with a bowl of oatmeal for supper, hallelujah, that's what we're going to eat. He said it's come from God. It's a blessing of God. He says, verse 8, ye shall not do after all the things that ye do here this day, every man whatsoever is right in his own eyes. So he said, listen, just because it's right in your eyes don't mean it's right in God's eyes. Verse 12, and ye shall rejoice before the Lord your God, ye and your sons and your daughters. Listen, your children, teach them to rejoice and be happy. Be thankful. Verse 32 says, what thing soever I commanded you, observe to do it. Thou shalt not add thereto, nor diminish from it. I think about this point where the house come into my mind. And thinking, man, that next generation thought, I can do something better than that. Listen, we got a lot of people in this world that says, I can do a lot better than that old King James. I can do a lot better than that old church service and them old green and red back hymn books. I can do a lot better than, you sure Jesus is the only way? What if I don't want to go that way? He said, listen, you better listen to this. You better not change this thing 1 ounce. And you better not add to it. It's black and white. You're either in and out. Here it is. If you do these things, the Lord's going to take care of you. He's going to bless you. You're going to enjoy the blessings of God, but you better not stray from them. And last but not least, and it's mentioned several places here, we're just going to look at maybe one, but chapter 32 of Deuteronomy, verse number 4, he says you better remember that foundation. He is the rock. His work is perfect. For all his ways are judgment, a God of truth and without iniquity, just and right is he. He's the rock. He's the foundation. God in the flesh had a similar story, didn't he, when he was here? He said, therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man which built his house upon a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon the house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon the rock. And every one that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened unto a foolish man which built his house upon the sand. The rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon the house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. He says, listen, have a firm foundation. So now, as you know, and we're fast forwarding for time's sake here to move quickly, Moses died. Joshua comes on the scene. Joshua's time to shine, if you will, and he steps up to the plate. And he did something here. I'm going to fast forward a little bit for time's sake. It's a familiar story to most of you, but in Joshua chapter 4 and verse number 20, when they crossed over the Jordan, you see in verse 19, actually, it says, the people came up out of Jordan on the 12th day of the first month and encamped at Gilgal in the east border of Jericho. And those 12 stones which they had took out of the Jordan did Joshua pitch in Gilgal. Now watch what he told them here. Joshua was trying to carry on the same tradition that Moses taught him, and he's trying to teach the others. He says, and he spake unto the children of Israel, saying, when your children shall ask their fathers in time to come, saying, what mean these stones? When ye shall let your children know, ye shall let your children know, saying, Israel came over this Jordan on dry land. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of Jordan from before you until you were passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up from before us until we are gone over, that all the people of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord, that it is mighty, that ye might fear the Lord your God forever. You know, I thought about that a little bit, and I'm sure not the perfect parent by no means, but I got to thinking, you know, I am raising some children, and they like to ask why, and it's, well, you know, the easy thing to do as a parent when somebody asks why are we going to church? Why do I got to dress up? It's easy, and what I say 99% of the time is, well, because you got to, and just do it. But you know, a lot of times I think about these stones a little bit. Joshua said, listen, when your children ask in time to come, what mean these stones? You tell them what they mean. It might do us all a little good when our kids ask, why we got to go to church? Instead of because it's what we have to do, it might do a little good sometimes to tell them what it means to us. And remind them that we were slaves down in Egypt. And that this church is where I was born again. Why we got to dress up? Well, the truth of it is because the Lord has blessed our family. And He's put shoes on our feet and clothes on our back. And it's just our reasonable service that a couple hours a week we can go to His house and worship Him. See, it's about teaching the children. It's a little bit more just because that's what we're going to do and that's what we settle for. You know, we often take it for granted, but you ask me how I know He lives, because He lives within my heart. Because it's real. It's truth. So Joshua said here, he said, listen, you tell them. And then in his final charge, of course, he finally told them in the end, you know, listen, I don't know what you're going to do, but as for me and my house, we're just going to serve the Lord. It's my house. We're going to serve it. The children's going to serve. I'm going to serve. So now, just in closing tonight, I've kept you long enough. Let's fast forward here to the book of Judges. Judges chapter 1, verse 16. And the children of Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up out of the city of palm trees with the children of Judah into the wilderness of Judah, which lieth in the south of Arad, and they went and dwelt among the people. That could be a problem, couldn't it? After everything we've read tonight, now we finally get a glimpse into, all of a sudden, they made some wrong choices, didn't they? Verse 21 says, I'm not going to read all these, and the children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites. They were supposed to utterly destroy, but it says in verse 25, and when they showed them the entrance into the city, they smote the city with the edge of the sword, but they let go the man and all his family. Verse 27, neither did. Verse 29, neither did. Verse 30, neither did. Verse 31, neither did. Verse 33, neither did. Verse number 1 of chapter 2, and the angel of the Lord came up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I made you to go up out of Egypt, and have brought you into the land which I swear unto your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you, and ye shall make no league with the inhabitants of the land. Ye shall throw down their altars, but ye have not obeyed my voice. Why have ye done this? Verse 3, wherefore I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they shall be as thorns in your side. Not trying to spiritualize just a few little verses here, but we started our opening scene tonight with, if you remember, and lo, it was all grown over with thorns. And the stone wall was broken down. I looked on it, received instruction, I learned something, said this is not where I want this to go. These thorns halt progress. Thorns are tough to get through. Joshua dies, and we read, and now we open the curtains to where we began. And also all that generation were gathered unto their fathers. And there arose another generation after them which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. You know, I don't know about you, but tonight it's really challenged me that we have an opportunity to teach our children, but to also teach them to teach others and to serve so that don't get lost in one generation. To teach them that no matter what's going on around the world, and sometimes we're forced to talk about it, and life is real, but this is still the only truth that's worth holding on to in this world. This church is a lighthouse and can continue to be as long as the Lord tarries His coming. And I thought about this in closing, and I'm done. I remember when Pastor Chuck was gone, I think it was the first time with Miss Linda in 4 years. He'd never been away from his church and not missed a Sunday unless it was planned. And he was going to be gone for 30 days and when she first started taking her treatments. And I remember it really bothered him. And he said, Matt called him. And he said, Dad, what in the world are you so worried about? I understand. I mean, you've been at that church. He said, but you've got assistant pastors and preacher boys. And if you ain't taught them no better than that in 25 years, then you've failed. It's going to be just fine. But it's because he's taught the others and taught them to teach and preach and carry it on. So I thought about that. If the next generation can't pick up tonight, if we were all gone from 40-year-old and up, then we failed. If we couldn't walk out of this place tonight and the young generation come up, and would they struggle a little bit? Sure they would. Would they get everything right? No. But if they couldn't pick up where we left off, shame on us. We failed. In the short time that I will be allowed here on this earth with my children, if they can't pick up where their fathers left off, shame on me.